All right, autopilot tips. What have I got for you? Well, first things first is the settings. There's really only three things that I'd recommend here. First is obviously make sure you've got auto steer turned on. When it comes to activation, this is something I'll talk about more in this video, but I would recommend everyone start with double pull. If you've got a new Tesla, that's actually going to say double press because you need to press the scroll wheel to activate autopilot. And then the third one is just under set speed. I'd recommend everyone have speed limit selected rather than current speed. This will actually allow autopilot to just work a little bit harder for you. When it comes to engaging autopilot, you don't actually need to pull the whole way down. You just can do it lightly. And this is something that took me way too long to learn. Also, something random that I just learnt yesterday is if you're listening to a podcast and you use the left scroll wheel and push it left or right, it'll skip the podcast by 15 seconds. The other thing is, if you hold down the left scroll wheel in either direction, it will actually switch your media entirely. So you can go from podcasts to Apple Music, for example. When it comes to changing lanes on standard autopilot, putting the indicator on will actually make it a lot easier to disengage autopilot because it will loosen that resistance that you normally have in the steering wheel. The reason that you would want double pull turned on in this situation versus single is because when you change lanes and it disengages auto steer, it actually reverts back to adaptive cruise control. So it will maintain your speed versus single pull, which would actually disengage everything. And you're going to find that the regen braking kicks in straight away and you're going to need to put your foot on the accelerator. So as an overall experience at this current iteration of the software, having double pull or double press is going to be a much better experience on things like the highway. All right, so another small thing on changing lanes in autopilot, when you get back into your lane and you re-engage, doing that will actually cancel your turn signal. So I know this is a small thing, but it's one less thing that you need to worry about. I'd recommend turning on auto cancel in your indicator settings under lights. This will just use the camera system in the car to determine when you'd likely want them turned off. It doesn't always get it right and it can take a bit of time to get used to, but I'd say 9 out of 10 times I find this setting really helpful. Okay, so there's two ways that the right scroll wheel is going to be useful to you when you're using autopilot. First is changing the follow distance. By pushing the scroll wheel to the left or the right, it allows you to change the car lengths in between you and the car in front. And I actually like changing my follow distance depending on the type of driving that I'm doing. And like all of these things that we're talking about, this actually saves to your driver profile. So even if you rent a Tesla from Hertz, your follow distance is going to stay the same. The second thing the scroll wheel is good for is adjusting your speed. So you can do a big swipe up or down for increments of 5, or just move the wheel slowly for increments of 1. And this is something I find I'm actively doing all the time when I'm using autopilot. For example, if you're coming up to a bend in the road, autopilot will actually slow for the bend, but normally not enough for it to feel super comfortable. So just scrolling back the speed a little bit can really help. And this is that part in the settings where I recommended you set autopilot to speed limit, not current speed. And it saves you from manually having to set the speed limit every time. But there are a few tricks to setting the speed manually if you prefer. First is that you can accelerate to the desired speed and then press down once on the stalk, or you can also move the right scroll wheel. The second one is that you can actually tap the little speed sign that you see on the display, and that will just increase your max speed to the current speed zone. And then lastly, the method we use all the time is to just hold down that right stalk for about 2 to 3 seconds and you'll see your max speed increase to the current speed limit. Now, obviously, if you've got a new Model 3 without stalks, you're not going to have as many inputs, but hopefully with future updates and even the potential of full self-driving coming to Australia soon, you shouldn't have to worry too much. One cool alteration to autopilot that was based on customer feedback is now when you're passing a large truck on the highway, your car will actually move over a little bit within its lane to just give you a bit more space and help you feel a little bit more comfortable. We've also seen quite a few improvements when it comes to cyclists and pedestrians. The car will now slow down for them, but it's not freaking out like it used to. One simple tip when it comes to using autopilot in traffic is lowering your max speed so the car doesn't become jerky when there's a gap and it's time to accelerate again. It's also a good idea just to reduce down your follow distance to help with that as well. And once you get comfortable using autopilot in traffic jams, it's actually really useful and a bit of a game changer. You can also turn on autopilot when you're at a standstill. For example, if you're sitting at the lights and there is a car in front of you, you can engage it. It can be a little bit slow to take off from the lights, so it's just nice to give the accelerator a bit of a tap in that situation. And obviously, standard autopilot here in Australia does not stop for red lights under any circumstance, even though it can detect them. So keep that in mind. Obviously, you always need to have a lead car in front of you in that type of situation. Another thing I just learned recently is when you've got navigation on and there's a turn approaching, autopilot will actually start to slow down for you. So a few times I've got in the car and started driving and forgotten that there's an auto destination already filled in, and all of a sudden autopilot starts slowing down and I'm just like, what is going on? It turns out that the navigation is preparing you for that turn and autopilot's bringing you down to speed. And it does help you if you've got navigation in to not miss that turn. Small thing, but a few people have asked me if the brake lights actually come on when autopilot is slowing down using regen. The answer to that is yes, but one tip is you can actually check the screen inside the car. That visualization of the Model Y or the 3 or whatever you've got will show in real time what everyone else is seeing. So if your headlights are on, it will show. You also have all the colorful dials down on the right hand side as well. The auto high beams work so incredibly well now at night. They block out any oncoming traffic perfectly. But if you do want the auto high beams to be switched off, you can just push that left-hand stalk in and that should disable them unless there's truly not enough light for autopilot to operate. And when it's really, really dark, you might find that you get a message coming up on your screen to say that the left or right camera is blocked. That is literally the camera system not detecting anything because it's so dark. So nothing to worry about. And much to everyone's delight, the automatic windscreen wipers can now be switched off when autopilot is enabled. For a long time there, they automatically had to stay on, and that was causing grief for a lot of people, including myself. Now you can totally switch them off. All right, I'm down to my last two tips here. Some people find that using Rainbow Road, which you can find in Toy Box, that turns the autopilot screen to be rainbow colored. People find that that makes it more obvious when autopilot is on. So for beginners, that could be a good thing to do. And then the other thing that some people might not be aware of is up in the top corner of the screen, when autopilot is available, you'll see the little steering wheel icon appear. That's when you know you can enable it. Some people will tell you that autopilot is not special and that all new cars have it. But I disagree. After using it for 3 years now, it's still hands down our favorite feature. And it's crazy to me that it comes standard on every Tesla. And a really good example of that is my dad, who has a relatively new Mercedes, yet still much prefers the autopilot system in the Tesla, so much so that he's now gone and bought himself a second-hand Model Y. And so I think the thing for any new owners out there is to just build your confidence with autopilot, get used to it, understand how it thinks, know when is a really good time to disengage the system. Keep in mind that it's far from perfect. It still can swerve at random times. Phantom braking can still occur, but all of these things are rare. All in all, this system is going to put you in safer hands when it's on, and Tesla have the data to back that up. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting. I've spent about 2 weeks filming and editing it, so I wanted to just provide some value in the whole autopilot space. There's obviously enhanced autopilot, which is a whole nother category. And then hopefully we get full self-driving becoming available in Australia soon, like they have in the US. Stay tuned for more Tesla videos coming soon, and I'll catch you guys in another one.